Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I'm Paul Dottino. He's Super Bowl champion Howard Cross. So glad you could join us today on what is a difficult day for so many players. Over 1,300 NFL players around the league are going to find out today that they have been cut, waived, released, you name it. They'll be off 53-man rosters. Now, a whole bunch of them are going to be able to come back and get onto rosters tomorrow, and an even bigger bunch of them are going to be able to go to practice squad rosters tomorrow starting at 12 o'clock. But that won't help a bunch of folks who get cut today, Howard, because by 4 o'clock New York time this afternoon, there will be 53-man rosters for all 32 NFL teams.
Well, the first thing, good job for all the guys that are coming out giving it their best effort and trying to make teams. That's great. It is kind of strange, though, when people think about getting cut and, like, what it means. I know fans are watching and stuff, but think of it this way. Paul, you've done something pretty much your whole life, and then one day someone wakes up and tells you, hey, sorry, we don't need your services, and we really appreciate you coming out, but we don't need you. And then you're out hunting for a job. And again, it's something that a lot of these guys did their entire lives. So that's what, it's kind of their makeup. It's a hard transition for some guys when they get cut. But, hopefully, they got plans for the future. That's how you have to look at it.
Now, just so people understand a couple of things. First of all, the Giants have not released any official names that they're going to part with during the course of the day. So for that reason, we're not going to announce any names because they haven't. There are rules here within the confines of the show.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to talk about a particular player and you'd like to ask us what we thought about that player or how he might have fit or didn't fit, we can discuss that hypothetically. We could do that, but we cannot discuss actual certainties about players who are no longer on the 53. Because to be frank with you, something could even change. Well, even though we don't know, the list doesn't go into the league until 4 o'clock. That's when it becomes official. It is not impossible. I will tell you a story, Howard. And by the way, in case you're not watching us live, you can catch this show and all of our Giants programs as part of the archive on our Giants Podcast Network, Giants mobile app, and podcast platforms everywhere, and as well as giants.com/podcast. So let me just get that out of the way. I spoke to a running back named Ryan Grant. He was a Notre Dame alum. Do you remember him?
Yeah, I remember Ryan Grant.
He was a good player.
Yeah.
Did well for the Packers for a few years.
Yes, he did.
He was with the Giants.
For a hot second. Yep.
Okay. Actually, I think for 2 years. Very short time.
Yeah.
Now, Ryan and I were very friendly. And I was on the phone with Ryan Grant at about 5 minutes before the cutdown.
Okay.
And Ryan and I were on the phone, and he was told he had made the team.
Okay.
And he was very, very, very happy. And I congratulated him. And we were not doing anything official. It was not an official interview. It was just a pleasantry.
Yep.
Just to say, hey, man, congratulations. You really worked hard. You deserved it. Good to see you around. At 1 minute to 4 o'clock, the Green Bay Packers called the Giants and offered a trade.
Wow.
And Ryan Grant was traded to the Packers literally within 60 seconds of the 53-man deadline.
Well, there's going to be so much going on. There are players and positions they might need help and depth at, and if I noticed this when we go upstairs and we're watching the game and we're walking around, especially in the preseason. You'll see other logos of other teams that are up there as well. They're there to scout and look out and try to see what they can see and figure out, okay, well, he looks good. I wonder if he's going to make their team or not. And they've had their eye on guys. When you are in the system, there are other teams watching you constantly trying to figure out how to get their hands on you.
No doubt.
And if they need somebody, a veteran, a talented rookie that didn't quite fit in for somewhere else, they'll be calling you right away.
So the point being, no matter what you have read today, until that list gets submitted in pen and paper and ink and computerized email to the NFL, it's not official, and it may not turn out to be accurate.
Sometimes it's not even official. It's all the way up to game week. it can still change.
Well, that's the other part to this. The other part to this is there will be machinations within the course of the roster that can change the 53. I tell people all the time, this is the first 53 or the initial 53 at 4 o'clock today. It is not the 53 you will have at kickoff week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings. It will not be.
That's crazy.
There will be changes made tonight and tomorrow, and maybe even the next day.
Exactly.
And so understand that, which is why I don't predict the Giants 53 in advance, because it's just stupid. There's not enough information that you have, especially on injured players. Howard, how about this? This year there's a new rule where you have retrievable injured reserve on 2 of your players. So in other words, you can actually protect 55 instead of 53 because you can announce 2 guys for retrievable injured reserve. Injury reserve. I didn't mean waivers. I meant injury reserve. You could get 2 guys on retrievable injured reserve and name them today before your 4 o'clock cut down time and not count them on your 53. So in other words, you actually have 55.
So for 6 weeks, you got 55.
For 4 weeks.
4 weeks, okay.
For 4 weeks.
IR is 4.
Those guys on the retrievable IR have to be out for 4 weeks.
Okay.
Then there's a 21-day window during which they can practice and be activated. If you don't activate them after 21 days, they automatically go to injured reserve. And they have to stay there.
Again.
They're out for the year.
Okay. So
they stay.
All right. So you have 2 guys that get, you said 4 weeks for injured reserve, then 21 days of practice.
Correct.
That's a lot of weeks.
Well, this is what you can do this with guys. Now, let's just say for argument's sake, I'm going to go hypothetical here. Player X got dinged up in one of the last 2 preseason games.
That's 7 weeks.
And you think he's going to miss at least a month or so of the season.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You could take this move if you want, use it to your advantage, and save somebody else's spot on the roster.
For 2 months, basically.
If you want to.
Okay. That's interesting. It's going to be interesting how to use that one.
Now years ago, Howard, when you played and when I started covering this game a long time ago, there weren't all these little twists and turns and little things that you could do.
Well, they're doing more now.
Now there's a lot.
Well, one thing that's crazy is that there are so many more games. The more games you play, the more chance of players getting banged or dinged or whatever.
Right.
So you got to find ways to get more depth and be able to have guys around. So that's one thing that's crazy.
All right, 201-939-4513. I don't want to take up any more of your time. Folks, I just wanted to give you some context as to what we are dealing with today. At the end of this program, we're going to have to cut off at around 1:25 because at 1:30, Brian Dable is meeting the media. I do not know if he's going to give us any list or not. I honestly have no idea. 15 minutes after his media session, there's going to be a 1-hour practice. Okay. After practice, you still have, that'll take you to 2:45.
Okay.
There is still an hour and 15 minutes until the 4 o'clock deadline.
That's true.
So much can happen between now and then. Right now, we're going to talk to you. 201-939-4513. And we will get to your calls in just a second. Want to remind you.
Giants on Giants right now.
Yeah, the Giants Fan Fest is coming up on Friday, September 6th, presented by Wendy's. It's at MetLife Stadium. Doors open at 5 p.m. We're going to celebrate 100 seasons of Giants football. There'll be a ceremony honoring the top 100 Giants, autographs, panel discussions by Giants legends, historic displays, photos with the Lombardi trophies, and an incredible drone light and fireworks show to end the night. Get your tickets now by visiting giants.com/fanfest. And the latest edition, the latest chunk of players that takes you all the way down to 11, is that right, Pearson? It's from 20 to 11, was released earlier this morning.
Okay. Who are they?
You want to say him?
Yeah, I want to see.
I'll call him up for you. Phil Simms, by the way, is number 11. How appropriate.
That's awesome.
All right. I'll call that up for you while we go to the phones, and we will take our first phone call of the day. And it is, I got to keep going through all of this stuff.
It's Phil.
It's Phil.
Hey, Phil
in North Carolina. You can't believe all the stuff that is crowded into this Word document. It's impossible to find the callers. Hello, Phil.
And the writing is so large.
You're next. Go ahead, Phil. You're first. You're first, not next. You're first.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I understand, Paul. I agree with you with the Word documents. I have to read everything off of paper instead of a computer because I'm an old-timer. So, yeah. But two things. One is I just want to encourage people, if they haven't listened to John's Huddle podcast with the fellow that does the Football Almanac. Just fascinating stuff.
Yeah, Aaron Schatz.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So a lot of good information. So the second part, bringing back to my favorite discussion, which is the draft. And the reason why I focus so much on it is because if you think about it, we've been the best. We've been the third or fourth best team in our division in terms of drafting over the last 10 years.
Okay.
And as a result, we've been the third or fourth best team in our division, over that time period. And I want to go back to our offensive line selections in the 2022. We had Zudu and McKeithen. And I remember at the time they said that, North Carolina offensive line was actually really poorly rated.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we drafted two people from that line. And I think my interpretation or hypothesis on that is that we're focusing too much on certain types of traits that maybe aren't as important as other types of traits, and we're not focusing on cohesiveness and football IQ when it comes to offensive linemen. So I wanted to get your take on that, Howard and Paul, and because every time I bring these things up, I want to see what we could, what you guys can do as an organization to get better, and that's what my focus is on. So
well, I think what's happened over the last few years is just they hit one good hit, I think, with Thomas, and then outside of that, people are like looking for the guy that's going to stick. I think offensive linemen are kind of really are hit or miss, and the ideal that you can draft one and he's going to be ready to play is a hopeful thing, not a promising thing. And the reason why I say that is because the rules have changed so greatly from the time when you're in college, where you're practicing every day and you're grinding every day. You're in pads, and you got over 120 kids out there working together, trying to get better constantly. You leave that scenario and you bring into the NFL scenario where they don't have a chance to really work with each other. The padded practices are minimal at best. I think they have like 8 to 10 days in training camp that they can have on pads at all. And then they're out of, they have to learn all over again how to play football at a higher speed. And that's what the teams are talking about. That's what the teams are complaining about. It's not just the drafting of linemen. It's just like we want big, talented guys to come into this league and play, but how do we continue to develop them? And the Giants have had some decent coaches and tried to figure it out and had different schemes, but it's hard to develop them, hard to get them to get to the next level because there's not a lot of contact.
Yeah, I think that's an overall analysis, but of the mean,
Mm-hmm.
But why do I hate to say this? Why do the Cowboys and Eagles do a better job at drafting offensive linemen than we do? They're dealing with the same situation.
Yeah, but I think again they get lucky sometimes. We'll have a few years of great drafts and you hit on everybody, and then you'll have some years you don't hit on anybody. And it's not the. I really wish there was a real secret to the sauce. I mean, I thought Baltimore used to have great drafts for a long, long time. Then they went through a spout. Well, they don't have any good drafts. Pittsburgh, I used to think they had great drafts year in and year out, and then they get a little cold. Some teams hit. San Francisco has a good eye for talent, but all their guys are kind of like they're at the end of their contracts, and there's no real young guys coming up. So you just have to keep watching. It's not just us, we'll go through it too. The Eagles look great for 3 years, and all of a sudden they start tapering off. Dallas looked great for like a bunch of years, winning 12 games. But when it comes down to it, when things get tight, those guys are getting beat like everybody else is getting beat.
Phil, let me add this to you too, and it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg syndrome, but I'm going to throw it out there because it's part of the reason. If you go back and look at the best organizations with the highest level offensive lines over the last decade or so, chances are there was not a lot of changeover in the offensive line coaches.
Yeah,
there was probably a lot of consistency. They had good offensive line coaches, and they held on to them.
And the guys usually get to play together for a long time.
That's a good point.
If they play together for a long time, too, that really helps. Like the teams in 07 and 11, those guys were together for a long time. And not all of them were draft picks either. So that's the other thing that's kind of funny.
And you got to remember something, too. Most often, the assistants get churned out when a new head coach is named. Well, think about it, right? Since Tom Coughlin, right, the Giants have gone through 4 other head coaches.
Yep.
4 other head coaches in that time period. Think about that. I don't disagree with you.
And so what happens? The staffs get churned too, and that doesn't help the situation.
No, that's I totally agree with that. And I mean, good points, guys. I appreciate it, and that's why I value so much people like Howard and David Deal and those guys, because we found some diamonds there. So I'm hopeful one day we will find some more diamonds.
Me too.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. 201-939-4513. Howard, you wanted the guys in the group. Number 20, safety Jimmy Patton. Number 19, Ken Strong. He was a kicker and a running back. 18, Mark Bavaro. I think you know that guy.
Yeah, that's my guy.
Yeah, okay. 17, Carl Banks.
Banks.
All right. 16, Amani Toomer. 15, Tuffy Leemans. 14, Tiki Barber. 13, Charlie Connerly. 12, Y.A. Tittle. 11 is Phil Sims. I can tell you that even though we got an advertisement here that popped up on the screen. That's it for this grouping of players. Is that good?
That's a good group.
Very good group.
Yeah.
Every one of those guys is in the Ring of Honor, by the way. How about that?
I wouldn't doubt it.
Not really a surprise, right?
Not a surprise.
The lower you get on the list, the more likely those guys are up on the wall.
Yep, that's true.
DJ in Virginia, you're next on the show. Hello.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Very good. How we doing, DJ?
All right. So I had a question. So I was listening to, I guess it's kind of a two-part question. I was listening to a podcast, I think it was Colin Cowherd, and he was talking about roster building. And so he was talking about how he feels like the Giants GM Joe Shane is doing it wrong. And his philosophy was, he was talking about how your GM should pick his kind of guys, and then he should bring in the coaches to coach those kind of guys. And so one of the things he was talking about is, like, how the Giants are kind of, the word they're using is collaborative. So, like, Joe Shane will, talk to Dayball, and he's talking to Bowen now about what kind of guys they want to bring in. And so when I was thinking back, to, a couple years ago, we were doing the same thing when we had the last defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale. And so I'm kind of thinking, like, Wink Martindale's kind of guys were different. He wanted press man cornerbacks, and so we got Tay Banks. So it seems weird because, like, now we have Tay Banks on the team, and he's more of a press man corner, but our defensive coordinator, Shane Bowen, wants to play more zone. So is it a little weird, like we have the kind of players that Wink would have wanted, but now are we setting ourselves back by now we'll have a defensive coordinator who wants to play more zone?
No. You try to draft the best players you can get. That's number one. You don't draft necessarily for need unless you're taking a quarterback early in the draft or something. But most of the time you're drafting trying to get the best player available. So that's one. So when it comes down to, like, the way you build teams, and this is just my opinion, the way you build teams, you start from ownership, and what they do is they try to match a coach and a GM together. The coach and the GM, once they get there, usually they would like to have their own quarterback. They usually like to have a few, staple guys that are there, and they try to build around it. I think when Joe and everybody came here, they were trying to field a team and not so much, build a team. They just didn't have enough players that were healthy and that, that are even in the league at this point anymore. So they moved on from a lot of players. They brought new guys in. They had to draft guys. So they were building from almost scratch when they came in. Even though the team has been around for 100 years, they had a couple down seasons or a couple down coaching groups, and they were trying to build it back up. Yeah, I think they're doing pretty good job. As you can see, as I've seen that after this preseason has kind of passed by, the offensive line has looked a lot stronger. The quarterbacks are not getting hit and driven to the ground over and over again. So that's kind of good. The running backs aren't dodging people in the backfield, and it goes pretty far down. Like the second group and the third group are all kind of holding up. As far as defense goes, you got a excellent pass rusher and that you drafted in Thibodeau. Then you bring Burns in from the outside as he got you pick up from Carolina for very little draft capital to get him here. And all of a sudden, you got two incredible, maybe double-digit sack guys. You got Bobby Okereke in the middle of the defense, calling the defense, doesn't miss a snap. So, yeah, I think they're pretty much got it down. And the draft picks are going to be they were pretty good last year. They'll be even better this year.
Right. Okay, and my second part of the question is, so the way that Shane did it last year, it seemed like we were starting a lot of young guys on the offensive line. I'm just wondering, because it almost seems like he almost admitted that's kind of like a mistake, because this year it seems like we brought in more veterans. I think ideally, like when you're putting your team together, you want more veterans, and then maybe you want to sprinkle in a couple young guys to learn from the veterans. So are we making a mistake by having so many young guys starting in the secondary?
No, I think what he was probably referring to was like not having more bodies. Basically, we ran through 22, I think, or more guys at offensive line last year. You had your starters. You thought that they were going to be great. After the first game, Thomas is down. Your center's down. After the third game, your right tackle starts limping. Then your guard gets hurt. You're shifting guys in. You got guys coming in off the couch.
It was Niagara Falls is what it was.
Yeah, it was like when you get that many bodies hurt, there's nothing you can do about it. That's not the fact of the matter of him picking guys. It's just guys' bodies were not healthy. So this year you're getting guys coming back that hopefully are going to be healthier. You pick up a couple veterans that can play 2 or 3 positions, and you hope that they're going to be healthy as the season goes on. But last year we had a lot of falling bodies. So as far as the secondary goes, Tate Banks is going to be a pretty good guy. I don't know who's going to be the other side, whether it'll be Cordell Flott or if it'll be McLeod or whoever. But there's going to be some growing pains depending on the defense. They got to learn it and making sure they know it. If they know it and they understand it, I think there'll be enough pressure on the quarterback that it won't be a big deal.
Thanks, DJ. Appreciate the call. 201-939-4513. Rich in Florida is on line 3 on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Good afternoon, Godfather and Howard. This is the first time I ever had a chance to talk to Howard.
Hey, thanks.
Howard, I go back to 61. Godfather knows this. And I wanted to thank you for your service. You're a great Giant. And I'm just hoping and praying that your son, when he's going to get his master's, I guess, when he comes out of Notre Dame, that the Giants draft him. Wouldn't that be cool to have a father-son on the team? I mean, we got a kid in West Virginia, Jeremiah Trotter, who used to kill the Giants.
Yeah.
His son's a starting linebacker for the Mountaineers. So that is really cool. So I hope that happens.
If it does, the Crosses will need a lot of tickets for every game.
Oh, my goodness. The ticket request will be bubbling.
I think Howard can handle that, Paul.
Little Howard.
Little Howard's big Howard. But I couldn't agree with you more on the draft. I know you're going to have the grumblers call in and be criticizing JS about, he's going to have to cut some draft choices, which is really tough. But the draft is a crapshoot because you're dealing with young kids, and they're human beings. They all have flaws. We all have flaws. So I was just curious. Yesterday I just did some very, very cursory research. I just wanted to find out analytically where the Giants stood on their draft choices, making the team after 3, 4, 5 years. So did very cursory research. There was Sports Illustrated did a study and took the last 5 years. They took every team and they rated them. They had a bunch of matrix like number of Pro Bowl players, number of conference wins, number of division wins, et cetera. Now, I don't know, like in any statistical analysis, there's 2 very, very important metrics: validity and reliability. I have no idea what they did as far as that is, what the numbers were. But I was very curious. Just to let you know, and some of the listeners can do some more research. They rated the Giants as 23rd out of 32 teams as far as drafting a kid in year one, and would the player be available 3 or 4 years down the road? That's really, really interesting. And on a positive note, they gave the Giants a trending up. And of course, they had the 2 best draft choices, going back to Dave Gettleman, were Saquon and AT. So anyway, I know people are going to be grumbling, blah, 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 but drafts, like you said, it's, look like a kid like Evan Neal. He was tremendous in college, and he's had a lot of problems. I mean, that's just, what are you going to do? You can only do so much.
Yeah.
Go ahead. One last thing for Paul. We had this discussion last week or previous week on that Dallas blocked field goal. I sent you a video, and you and John a video of that block. I don't think you opened it, but take a look at that. Just take a look at that. Dallas really out-schemed the Giants, and I wish you would take a look at that video.
Okay, appreciate it, Rich. Take care. 201-939-4513. The one thing to keep in mind, the Giants not only changed general managers when Joe Shane came in, but they've also had quite a turnover in the scouting department too, Howard.
Yes, they have.
So it's not the same scouting staff. It is. There may only be 2 or 3 people still left from that old staff. There aren't that many. There was a lot of turnover.
I think I know one guy. I don't know if there's more than one person though.
Oh, I could tell you at least 2.
I haven't seen them.
But here's the facts. When the GM changes, you got your pro personnel director, you got your college personnel director, then you have your regional scouts, your super scouts. There's a lot of people that make up the personnel department.
Yeah.
So please, just don't think it's like, oh, the GM, it's one guy. There was a lot of turnover that Joe Shane has executed over his 3 years as the GM in that department.
And that's the new way to do things. Like, the new way to do things is when a new GM comes in, he comes in with a few guys that he knows really good, and then he goes and cherry picks all the guys from other places that he like. I like what they're doing here, and they keep in touch with each other. And now it's not as easy to probably break into the scouting world unless you're like a former player or former coach or something, but now these guys, you have to know these guys when they become GMs. That you got to be close to them because they're going to be making moves and they're going to be bringing people in. They're not bringing their buddies in. They're bringing in the guys they think are best because they're trying to get something done.
201-939-4513. Len from Maryland is next on BBKL. Hello, Len.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Hey,
oh,
Len.
well. How are you?
All right, man. We're getting close to the first 53 here.
Are you coming to the Fan Fest?
I'm sorry, I missed that part.
Are you coming to the Fan Fest? You are a guy who should be there.
I'm getting close to be able to say yes. My son-in-law says let's go, and
what are you waiting for?
We just may come up for the weekend because I'm certainly going to be at the first game.
Well, then you got to do it. You just got to do it. Come on.
It's going to be man. I mean, it's going to be a great night. Yeah, seeing those guys up close, that'll be. And a chance to get some autographs and say thank you to a bunch of them. And I'm sure going to look out for Howard Cross at that on that night as well.
I will be
good
there.
for you. Good for you. Hey, Howard, just a little bit of trivia. And it's you and Phil that I want to talk about. That is Phil Simms. You may be the only 2 guys on this top 100 list whose number on the list corresponds with their uniform number.
Oh, I'm number 88, I thought.
No, you're 87. Aren't you 87?
My jersey number's 87.
Pearson, is he 87 on the list? Do you know?
I think Howard was 87 on the list.
Pearson's going to check on that, Len. In the meantime, go ahead.
And of course, Phil is
11. That is true.
Yeah.
Phil is 11. And I got news for you. LT is not 56.
No. That's funny.
You know, on the latest group that dropped today, the latest 10. I mean, it's the right 10. I mean, this the committee's doing a great job. Just doing a great job. I think it's the right 10. You may argue a little bit about whether 15 should be 13, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But if you look at it as a group of guys, it's the right 10. And the first 10 have fallen into place. I mean, it's obvious who the top 10 is. It's going to be interesting to see, where some of these guys fall within that top 10.
Who's going to be number one?
It looks like Eli. Well, I think it's going to be LT. We'll see. And it's going to be interesting to see where Eli falls. On my list, I've got him either 5 or 6. I can't make up my mind whether it's Eli at 5 or Frank Gifford at 5. But I think they're right in the middle of the packs. But we'll see what happens. It's terrific. I think it's been one of the best parts of this celebration.
Sorry, Len. What I see is Howard at 88.
See?
Oh.
I know.
Okay, I missed by one, Howard. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I thought you matched.
And Len, from your day, who was number 88? Come on, cough it up. Who was 88 back in your day?
Aaron Thomas.
That's right, Aaron Thomas. Very good. Very good. I knew you'd know that.
Hey, listen, I can tell you some of the old numbers, but I have trouble telling you what Okerike's number is. But I remember the old numbers. Paul, just a quick question. I'm interested in your opinion on this. Biggest win in Giants history, either regular season or playoffs. What would you put as their biggest win? There's no right answer to this, Paul. It's just your own feeling.
No, there is no right answer. In my lifetime, the biggest win in Giants history has to be the Super Bowl against Denver in 21 because, that's the first one.
It's
the first one.
That's the first one.
That's
it. To me, I agree with that. And the quarterback on the Giants was, of course, Phil Simms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you got to remember something, Len. You're a little bit older than me. Now, again, I'm a historian, and that's great. But when I was growing up, Tarkenton was the quarterback. And even to imagine that the Giants would make the playoffs was quite a reach.
Right.
So I tell people all the time, and I've said it on this show, don't underestimate the value of that 1981 season, which for me was one of the greatest seasons in Giants history because it ended the Dark Ages and got the Giants back into the playoffs.
Yes, it did.
I mean, that word, playoff, the word did not exist.
Playoffs.
It did not exist,
Other than that final game against the regular season game against the Cowboys, I know you and I differ a little bit in what we thought was the biggest win of that season. I know you thought the Atlanta win was the biggest.
No
right?
question in my mind. Down in Fulton County in the mud and the rain and wow. That to me, that was the win that told me the Giants were actually good enough to fight for that playoff spot. That was the win that did it.
I thought the 5-6 Giants visiting the Super Bowl team, the Philadelphia Eagles, in mid-November.
Understood.
Where the Giants pulled that game off, and you probably remember LT chasing Jaworski threw one toward the end of the game, right across the field at the Giants bench.
Yes, I do.
A guy named Terry Jackson,
number 24,
picked it off and took it to the house with the entire roster chasing him down the.
Yep.
Chasing him down the sidelines, and that happened to be the Giants' tunnel, as you remember, visiting team tunnel coming out of the vet.
Yep.
In those days, I was sitting right behind that tunnel. That group nearly.
See, you were
Jackson.
there. That's why that game means more to you than the Atlanta game does.
I was there
because you were there.
Listen, if Jackson didn't catch that ball, I would have caught it.
There you go. And you would have run it back.
That ball hung up there for a long time. Hey, one other. What
do you got? Yeah, go ahead, Len, real quick.
Okay, yeah, I'll make it real quick. Current roster, biggest drop off from starter to backup. All right, Daniel, Dexter. The drop off at left tackle is unbelievable. It's like the Grand Canyon, for God's sake.
He is an all-pro.
God, please stay healthy. Please stay healthy, Andrew. Oh my goodness. Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Thanks, Len.
Have a good one.
201-939-4513. We got to get to some spots here real quick, but I'm going to go to John from Hawaii first. Then we'll get to our promos. Go ahead, John.
Morning.
I've been a Giant fan since 1963. My first practice was at Bear Mountain, New York.
Wow, great stuff.
The coaching staff last year, in my opinion, did a tremendous job. Just think, we were 4 plays away from being a 7-10 team with 22 different offensive linemen.
Yeah.
Our quarterback gone for half a season. And everybody's grumbling about the coaching staff and the direction of the Giants. They all should be applauding the coaching staff for the job they did last year.
Yeah, that's pretty much true. They kind of coached through a really horrible season and really horrible luck with people's health. So I thought they did a pretty decent job. And they were like really about 5 or 6 plays away from like being a winning team, which was funny.
Well, I'll go further than that, John. They actually beat the Jets. We know about the erroneous calls that were made at the end of that game that cost them the game. That game they actually won, but you know there were missed calls that screwed it up.
I don't say nothing about officials.
I understand, but you know I think we all saw the game. We know exactly what happened. So really they did win 7 games, but in any event, go ahead.
The Buffalo game and then the 2-point to Waller. That's another holding call.
Yeah.
That I never.
You're not going to get any argument from me. I don't go there because that was just one call. The Jet game, there were 3 botch calls at the end, so that's why I won't let that one go. But I understand what you said. There's no question that also could have been another one for them too.
Momentum is a funny thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. So yeah, you're right. 3 quarterbacks and everything that went wrong, and you know they were literally a Kleenex tissue away from being an 8-win team.
Closer to 10-game season.
Yeah.
Right, and that would have put us in the playoffs easily.
Yeah,
But just think, with all the injuries, we were playing that competitive football at the end of the season.
Yeah, well, the players played for coach. There's no question about it. Brian Dable had these guys playing hard.
Yeah, he understands. The guys don't give up. They go hard the entire time.
So I applaud the coaching staff. I think the Giants are headed in the right direction. I'm looking forward to a great season.
Well, John, I don't know if you have Twitter or not, but just stay off of it because you'll be a lot happier.
I only listen to your show. I mean, it's 7 o'clock in the morning here, so it's hard for me to get in touch with you as much as I would like. But I listen to you guys every day.
Well, you're very kind, John. Thank you so much for your interest, and be well.
Yeah, he's right. There was probably maybe I would say 7 or 8 plays if they go the other way that the Giants would have had a 10-win season. But they had 7 or 8 plays the year before that went their way and got into the playoffs. It's very close. A game of inches.
That is true too. All right, real quick, run or walk with Giants legends. The Giants Foundation will host a 5K race and kids run presented by Quest on Saturday, September 7th at 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds benefit the Giants Foundation. You'll receive a commemorative T-shirt. Then after the race, appearances by Giants legends and a live DJ. Register now at giants.com/5K. Giants Huddle Podcast has Giants and NFL luminaries all over the place. Long-form interviews with John. You can subscribe to your favorite podcast platform. Go to giants.com/podcasts. And all kinds of good stuff there. Giants season ticket memberships for 2024 still are available. Check out exclusive member benefits on giants.com/tickets. And then finally, Giants TV, the official connected TV streaming app. It is free on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. We are done with the promotional announcements. We go back to the phones. And, Pearson didn't quite get the name up there for me yet. Just throw him up, Pearson. It's okay. Just put him up. Just put him up. That's all right. Hello, you're next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Joshua from New Jersey.
Well, thank you for dialing us today.
How are we doing?
Good.
Go ahead. You're on the air, sir.
Yeah, I'm just a first-time caller. I wanted to discuss, the sports media coverage, narrative, whatever you want to call it, on Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
You'll appreciate knowing I don't personally put a lot of stock in the media coverage, but I hear fans and callers of your show, and I can tell, and you guys know obviously that a lot of them read too far into it, and they rip them to shreds for every mistake.
Yeah.
And we've all seen, like, the Jones-Trevor Lawrence comparison charts, right? How, people make him out to be the same player, and their numbers are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the idea to look into the numbers, and I made a little chart comparing Jones' 2022 season to Lamar Jackson's 2023 season. And I think the results would be surprising to most people. I think it helps shine some light on the discrepancy of sports media coverage of Jones. And so I'm just going to read, some of the numbers that I took down on the chart, that shows their season's pretty good.
Well, pick out the 4 key numbers to prove your point, and we'll be glad to listen. Go ahead.
So they both had a completion percentage of 67.2.
Okay.
Again, this is Jones' 2022 season, Lamar's 2023. Lamar Jackson had a better passer rating of 102.7. Jones had 92.5. Jones had very few interceptions, as you'll remember, 5, and Lamar Jackson had 7. Jones had 7 rushing touchdowns. Lamar had 5. Passing touchdowns is the biggest discrepancy, I would say. Lamar had 24. Jones had 15, but, I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but you got to remember who Jones was throwing to. Like, there were nobodies out there pretty much. They had Lamar Jackson had 230 yards passing a game in 2023. Jones had 200 yards per game in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar had 3,678 passing yards total. Jones had 3,205.
All right, Joshua, go ahead. One more. We'll let you do one more because I don't want to get bogged down in these numbers.
Yeah, just to round it out is 821 total rushing yards for Lamar to Jones' 708.
Yeah, see, a lot of what happens is you got to play complementary football. Right, Howard? We talk about it all the time, right? Complementary football. And everything's got to be taken into context. If you just take all the numbers out individually, it could tell a lot of different stories. But in context, Daniel Jones got the Giants into the playoffs and got them a road playoff victory, and he's got nothing to apologize for in that 2022 season.
Listen,
exactly.
I think the media coverage is they just need somebody to pick on in some cases like that, but they're not taking into account that the offensive line was really struggling for a few years, and Daniel was getting hit in the second step of a 3-step drop. So it's not you could put anybody back there at sometimes, and they know that, and that's why they were doing everything they can to rebuild the line as quickly as possible to help him out. For Daniel, whoever would be quarterback, there's no way to play if you can't protect yourself. I think Carr down in Texas kind of lived through that his first few years, and kind of he was in the league and out of the league. They broke him inside and out because he just couldn't get sacked 70 times one season or 75 times one season. That's just too much.
Right. Yeah, that's actually one thing I have noted down is the Giants' offensive line that year was 26th in the league, and Lamar's, when he won the MVP this past season, was 5th in the league.
Gee, what a coincidence, huh, Joshua? It's amazing how that works, right?
Good line play does it every time. It just does.
Nobody wants to talk about that. They just,
they want you to be out.
Jones it's all his fault what happens out there.
He's out there by himself.
And I'm not trying to say he's the MVP, but the media largely has him as a bottom 5 quarterback and Lamar as a top 5 quarterback. And, Jones has shown promise where he should be more towards the middle of ranking, I think.
Fair enough, Joshua. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate the call. 201-939-4513. We've got about 6 minutes left on the program.
Okay.
Our lines are open. If you'd like to get in, by all means, give us a quick dial. We will squeeze you in before we got to head over to Coach Brian Daboll's press conference. And again, we don't know if he's going to tell us about the players being taken off the roster or not. But certainly, this is a big media availability that we're all anxious to listen to today.
I doubt he'll do that because he'll wait till 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I don't think he will either.
You don't have somebody calling your player right before.
I hedge. I don't want to speak for him. Okay, don't want to do that. Howard, if there's one thing that you would have liked to have seen during the preseason that would have made you more confident about this team going into Minnesota in 2 weeks, what might that thing have been?
Everybody healthy would have been the one thing. It's and I know it's hard. I know, even the Neal injury was somebody being thrown into his ankles and stuff. So it's football. I get it, but I'd like to see more guys being healthy and ready to go. And that, being able, that's part of practicing with pads, and part of getting used to getting knocked around and getting dinged up a little bit is that you can tell who's going to be ready and who's not going to be ready. And one preseason game shouldn't be the deciding factor whether these guys can make it or not, or two, being able to play in one preseason game. It's just hard for me to watch and understand how they're not going to continuously get banged up. Not just our guys, but like the Jets had like a ton of guys leave the field also holding their shoulder or holding something. And it's just, I'd like to see the guys be healthier, and I don't know how they're going to do that.
I'm glad you just mentioned Evan Neal a second ago, Howard, because he finally got onto the practice field after that off-season ankle surgery. Was able to have a couple of practices with the second unit at the right tackle spot. And then the other night played 21 snaps against the Jets, gave up 1 sack off the edge, but otherwise I thought played well. Got rolled up on, said after the game he was not hurt. It was a matter of he had taken the number of snaps that they wanted him to play anyway. So he was not injured per se.
Good.
But I'd say that's baby steps in the right direction for him.
That's more than baby steps. He did pretty good in the game. I think the one time he got beat off the edge was a blitz, and they were hedging towards the inside, trying to protect the inside first. But at the end of the game, it got a little loose in there. A lot of guys were like falling and flopping around on the ground, and that's like that. It'll get you every time. You got to be careful with that.
And again, taking things into context, Tommy DeVito and the offense had a tough night, but Tommy was playing with all these guys who were on the back part of the depth chart. The Giants had 44 scratches of the 90 players on their roster going into the game. And, Tommy knew it was going to be a tough go, and he did what he could.
Yeah, he did a good job.
I don't demerit him at all.
No, he did a good job. He's doubled down on when you're in that situation. You're not just playing and trying to make things positive happen. You're also playing and you're coaching. You got to get guys lined up in the right spot. You're trying to call the protection, trying to make sure they know what the protection is that you're calling, and you got a lot more talking going on in the huddle. So it's a ton of work to do when you're in that position. Don't envy him for it, but that's what you're doing. Like, you're basically a coach on the field, and thank goodness he's had 2 years in the system so he could help himself and protect himself. But it's still tough.
All right, we got 1 more minute to go on the show, so let me ask you this, Howard.
Okay.
It's been a few years now. We've only had the 3 preseason games. Used to have 6, then we had 4. Now we've had 3. So many people in the league think that within 2 or 3 years we're going to be down to 2. And that may very well happen sooner rather than later.
And then there will be an extra game.
Okay, so right, we'll go to 18 and 2, 18 regular, 2 preseason. Knowing how you feel, and I feel like you do, that these starters need to get some reps because they need to spar before they get into the real fight.
Yep.
I got to think that you're not necessarily thinking we're going in the right direction with these preseason games.
I think that what's going to happen is they're going to have the joint practices more and more, right? They're going to try to get more and more joint practices in where you're going against other guys. So I'm trying to figure out how the timing's going to go. If you add the extra game, you take away a preseason game, then would you have an extra week of practice? Because you get 1 week, a full week with you and your guys practicing, then you're going to bring somebody else's team in. It's going to, I think the offseason is going to be probably more and more important with the OTAs and the mini camps and all that stuff, so you can get all your install in, because you're going to have hit the ground running in week 1. And then by week 2, when you get ready to go to pads, because you don't get to go to pads in week 1, you can only go to pads in week 2. Week 2, you'll go to pads, and by the end of that week, you'll be practicing against another team.
I think what'll happen is it'll be the old USFL schedule, 18 regular season games with 2 bye weeks. I think that's what they're going to wind up doing.
But that's not going to help them practice.
It won't help them practicing. No, you'll have the 2 preseason games, 18-week regular season with 2 byes built in. I think that's what we're going to wind up seeing. But in any event, that'll do it for this edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Remember, 4 o'clock today Eastern Time. Get down to 53. Beginning tomorrow at 12, you can add 16 practice squad players plus 1 international player. I suspect McAtamney, the Rutgers kicker from Ireland, that the Giants have had at camp, I would expect him to come back as the international exemption. Okay. And we will talk to you again on Big Blue Kickoff Live tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. For Howard Cross, I'm Paul Dottino. This has been Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So long, everybody.